Hey, everybody. Welcome to Keeping It Spiritually Simple. I'm your host, Sandra McEllis. Before I introduce our beautiful guest today, let me just please remind you that the algorithms of these shows are really on you. So every time you like, subscribe, share, leave a comment, it helps the movement in the invisible world of promoting these videos so they wind up in somebody's home who actually needs them. So the more likes, the more subscribes, the more shares, the more comments help all that. So today we have got Kendall McIntosh, functional medicine nutritionist here in DC. And we're going to talk about the types of muscle loss. Why do you lose muscle? What can we do to maybe help prevent it? What can we do if we're in it? How do we regain it? What nutritional support and testing may be important? How are workouts? What in the world is going on with this muscle loss, Kendall McIntosh?
Well, thank you so much for having me again. I appreciate it. Yeah, this is a big topic, especially as people age and, beginning as early as 30, we start to lose muscle mass, right? So, you ready to dive in? I can talk about the different types of muscle
Yeah,
loss. Okay.
absolutely. Let's talk about the types of muscle loss and a little bit about each of them because I think people are getting very confused because they're inundated through social media. And I think hearing it from a qualified professional, let's go.
Great. Well, like you said, there's a lot of different things out there on social media. You can kind of get sucked into a whole bunch of different rabbit holes, and really we'll just keep it pretty basic. Sarcopenia is really the main type of muscle loss that is age related, and typically 1% per year after the age of 30 is what we can expect, and then that accelerates when we get into our 60s. Okay. So then we have a certain type of muscle loss called cachexia. It's a little tricky word. And this is muscle wasting that is due to chronic illness and inflammation. So this is, think cancer, autoimmune disease, really when your body's in a, illness state, we can lose that muscle mass. Myopenia is a general muscle deficiency. It's not tied to aging. It's more of a, personal issue. And then we have diffuse autophagy. I don't know if I said it right. And that's muscle loss when you're, when someone's bedridden or they have inactivity. That's when, there's really no movement at all. So that's just kind of, we realize that our muscle mass is losing there. And then we have stress related catabolism. So we have anabolism and catabolism, and so catabolism is when things break down. So when the muscle breaks down from chronic stress, which we'll talk about, and poor recovery from an issue or overtraining. So that's when catabolism starts and things start to break down. So like I said, it really begins around age 30. That's when we start to see the decrease. It worsens after 40, and then it becomes critical and it accelerates after 60. And then women post-menopause are particularly vulnerable due to this, due to the hormone shifts. And, again, muscle loss can happen with chronic stress, low protein intake, which we'll talk about, and sedentary lifestyles.
So let's talk about that hormone deficiency. We always hear about, we need some HRT in our life, perimenopausal, postmenopausal. And let's talk about the critical, low T, estrogen, progesterone, all those things that may contribute. So how are those affecting the muscles?
Yeah, so low sex hormones are definitely a contributing factor to muscle loss. Low testosterone, like you mentioned, and DHEA in men and women can impair muscle building. So that's that anabolism. So that's the building of the muscle. And then low estrogen in women, that decreases muscle mass, and as we know, can increase our fat storage. And then hormone replacement therapy, like you mentioned, that can help, but so can lifestyle, adaptogenic herbs, and then targeted nutrition can also play a big factor there. And then our hormones interact with insulin, our thyroid, and cortisol, and that all impacts muscle health. And speaking of cortisol, stress increases cortisol, which in that catabolic state, that breaks down muscle tissue. It impairs muscle synthesis. And as we know, high rates of cortisol can disrupt our sleep and our recovery. So chronic stress definitely depletes our micronutrients that we need for muscle repair, specifically magnesium, vitamin B6, and zinc. That's all what happens when your body is in a chronic state of stress. And then long-term, stress contributes to sarcopenia and metabolic decline.
So what we have here is the stress, which is our adrenal glands going nuts and producing cortisol. And this happens in our everyday life. And it happens with some of our inability to deal with some of the stressors that go on, because what could be one person's stress could be someone else's absolute breakdown. So with that being said, so are we saying that nutrients do not assimilate or process in the same way when you're under high levels of stress, even if you think you're cool, calm, and collected, but your body is telling you something else?
Yeah, so when your body is in a chronic state of distress, like I said before, it depletes your micronutrients that are essential for building back that muscle. So, like I said, magnesium, B6, and zinc are three of those micronutrients that are that all come from food, but can also be extremely, broken down if we don't if we are in that chronic state of stress. So, yeah.
Well, it's sort of like when you're under those states of stress, you're never really properly digesting your food. So you've got a whole mess going from the stomach to the small intestines to the large intestines, and nothing is really being absorbed properly into the bloodstream to be distributed appropriately. So that makes total sense if your cortisol levels are up, blocking everything, because their majority, I think, I see them as like fighters. They're just up there with their fists up going, nope, you're not getting in, you're not getting in, and you're not getting in. Oops, that was a good thing supposed to get in. Oh, well, you're still not getting in. So your body is in this, I got to stand up straight. I've got to, find my way, out of this crisis, kind of thing. But we look at that fight or flight and don't really contribute it to the daily things that we're dealing with, getting in and out of traffic, being 10 minutes late, our kids home for the summer. That's stressful on a lot of people. So what are some of the things that we can do to bring down some of this stress so that we can maybe negate some of this muscle loss that's naturally occurring?
So lifestyle for sure. I mean, there's definitely a lot of mindfulness things. I mean, just to back up for a second, I think we're all, especially women, we constantly, it's kind of an epidemic. Everyone's living in a chronic state of stress right now. Our life's just going at 1,000 miles an hour, and sometimes it's hard to kind of get ahead of that and find some time to really, like I said, lifestyle adjustments to be more mindful, take some time to calm your nervous system, cutting off screens and cutting off that social media that is, so addictive, and just really being able to calm our nervous system and, get back to a place of homeostasis. But adaptogenic herbs are also very great for helping to, calm the nervous system. And then especially, different types of targeted nutrition. But it's definitely an issue. I mean, everybody's dealing with chronic stress and those cortisol levels. It's a ripple effect, because it also it keeps you in that fight or flight stage, and especially for women, and this is off topic, but women tend to hold on to a lot of fat. When their body is in a chronic state of stress, the body naturally thinks it's going to be without food for a long time, so it holds on to that fat, and those cortisol levels stay at a high level. It's kind of like being chased by a lion. Your body kind of feels like it's being chased, so it has to protect itself. So really being mindful and taking some time during the day to slow down. Instead of looking at social media, read a book, get away from those blue screens that have a whole host of other side effects. Breathing techniques and stretching and yoga and all of those things that really bring our nervous system down can help tremendously. And foods that are low, anti-inflammatory foods, those are also very helpful. So yeah, there are a lot of different tactics that you can tap into to help to reduce that cortisol levels.
Thank you. So let's talk just for a quick second about adaptogenic herbs, because
Mm-hmm.
that gets confusing to a lot of people because they think, oh, mushrooms or oh, this or oh, that. What exactly would be an adaptogenic herb?
Yeah, so adaptogenic herbs are they're really cool. So they're actually adapting to your what's going on in your body. So they do regulate hormones, or I mean, they do regulate cortisol. They help to improve energy, focus, resilience, all of those things. Ashwagandha is usually at the very top of that list. I recommend it to a lot of my clients a lot of time. It's the top adaptogenic herb that helps to reduce that cortisol. It actually also helps to support our thyroid and our other sex hormones. And it really goes well to calm the nervous system. A couple other, rhodiola is also very good. It helps to kind of boost stamina. It helps with mental clarity. Holly basil is another one. And then, yes, like you mentioned, the mushrooms, reishi mushrooms are also very good. They help to calm the nervous system, support the immune system. They also helps with sleep. Cordyceps, another form of mushrooms that actually helps to increase energy and stamina. So there's a lot of things out there that can definitely help support that regulation of cortisol and increase energy, focus, resilience, and the immune system.
Yes. And, you know, back to what you were saying about women and holding on to fat and going into deprivation, you know, that all goes back to the calories in, calories out, calorie
Mm,
restriction. And, you know, I always say women are givers of life. So it's a natural, innate thing for the body to go, hey, you're not giving me something. I'm going to hold on to everything. And also, when you're under that cortisol attack, it wants to protect the organs. So it wants to surround it with an
mhm.
insulation of fat. So we're doing ourselves an injustice by not saying, okay, hey, I'm going to stop, and sit and connect with my breath and figure out how I can bring down my cortisol, less caffeine. Also, let's not go into Amazon and start buying all these
Right.
supplements that she just mentioned. You know, her website will be in the description down below, and you could look at some of the things that she suggests. And of course, you know, we say at the very end, she does offer a 15-minute complimentary pre-booking session. So if you booked a session, you can she'll give you 15 minutes complimentary to kind of review some things. So don't go out there buying all this stuff. Now let's talk
Yeah.
about reversal, Kendall.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some people who, you know, maybe have not been doing, you know, a nutritional
Protocol
direct
or yeah.
drive
Yeah.
protocol for themselves,
Right.
and maybe they've been doing old school workouts that aren't really beneficial to them, and they're at that perimenopause, postmenopause, and stuff's changing rapidly. And before everybody gets too discouraged, what can we do to reverse some of this?
Well, the good news is, yes, it is reversible. And there's a common myth out there that we have to do all of this cardio, cardio, cardio. And actually, the number one way to help reverse muscle loss is with strength training. So strength training, resistance training, lifting weights, using bands, really engaging your muscles, because what's happening is, back to basics in middle school health class or whenever we learned about this, your muscle fibers break apart when you're doing and then you are helping to rebuild them back, and that's what's helping to increase that muscle mass, is when you're building it back. And then ingesting sufficient protein. So there's a lot out there right now on how much protein everyone should be having, and I like to try to say that between there's a new thing out that a lot of women are kind of just really a little bit shocked about, but it's actually, there's a lot of science behind it. It's 1 gram of protein per body weight, and that might seem really, really high, but there's actually a lot of scientific studies that are coming out now that it's actually really beneficial for you to have about 30 to 40 grams of protein per meal, and then spread out throughout the day. So depending on your body weight, that would probably land you at about 100 grams of protein per day. but actually scientific studies are now saying, and especially postmenopausal women, that the more protein, the better for our system. But sufficient protein with essential amino acids. So our amino acids are the building blocks of protein, and there's actually a lot of different supplements out there that are pure amino acids. I'm using a lot of them in my practice. They're very beneficial. So there are a lot of options there. And sleep, stress reduction, and detoxification are all actually going to help to reverse that muscle loss as well. So it's never too late. Rebuilding lean muscle and regaining our strength is definitely possible at any age.
Okay, so let's break this down for our listeners a little bit. Let's just say you're a 135-pound female postmenopausal. How much protein would one need with each meal or with each snack? And then I also want to talk about all these proteins that we're putting in our shakes, the different types. So that's going to be the next question. So let's talk about let's just say you're 135-pound postmenopausal woman in your 50s or whatever, the early 60s. What would a plate look like? What would a meal look like, breakfast, lunch, and dinner?
Yeah, so one of the best ways to figure this all out without trying to imagine it in your head is to use a free tool to log your nutrition for the day. I get my clients to use Chronometer. You can get a free account. And it's really an exciting and educational experience to start logging your food to actually see how much protein is in the food that you're eating. But back to your 130-pound postmenopausal woman, scientifically and clinically speaking, now we are looking at her having 130 grams of protein per day. Okay, so that is being spread out throughout the day. Now, everybody is different. We don't know if this woman is doing any kind of intermittent fasting or anything else. So it's all very personalized. But if she were waking up in the morning until the time she goes to bed, we would want a really good nutrient-dense breakfast that could include eggs, some sort of meat products, and then, like you mentioned, protein shakes, protein powders. Those are super easy ways to incorporate additional protein throughout the day. There's vegetarian options that are all plant-based, and then there's whey protein that is more animal-based. And definitely a personal preference. I have clients that use only plant-based, and then I have clients that love a whey protein that is more animal-based. It's very personalized. Vegetable-based plant protein sometimes will give someone gas because there's a lot of vegetables and a lot of plants going in at the same time. So that can kind of cause some upset in the stomach, but either one, it's a personal preference. And I think by trial and error, you can find different options. I love a protein powder that has mushrooms because you're getting in a lot of those adaptogenic properties in there as well. And those can never be bad, especially as we age with all of the additional support for our brain. But then again, so we're talking about spreading out protein for lunch and afternoon snack. It really just depends on the person and, kind of how they're eating, but we want to look for lean proteins, right? So we're going to get protein in, all of our animal-based products. We're going to get protein in beans and legumes. We do get some protein in different kinds of vegetables. So it's really kind of learning what foods you're eating do contain protein, and then logging your food and journaling your food is the best way to figure out if you're getting enough throughout the day. I have a lot of clients that think they're eating enough and they're really only getting about half the amount that they need. So that's when we want to add in a good nutrient dense smoothie. It's a great time of year to have, frozen fruits and vegetables on hand to throw into the blender with a couple scoops of protein powder. That's an easy way to get 20 or 30 grams of protein in right there. Or just even a protein shake with a nut milk or whatever you like to, or water, whatever you like to mix in with your protein powder. Very, very easy ways to get in that extra protein. Couple other things that clients love are some meat sticks. Grass-fed meat sticks are a great snack on the go. Nut butters with some fruit. That'll give you some healthy fats and also some protein. Yeah, there's a lot of different things out there. So I hope that helped to answer your question, but really spreading out your protein throughout the day with really, no more than about 30 grams of protein. Back in school or at some point during my education, I think I was told that about 30 grams of protein is about as much as your body can handle at one time. Not 100% sure if that's accurate, but that's a good target to really kind of think that 30 grams and then spread out throughout the day. And then adding in a few of those little snacks along the way will definitely kind of get you to your goal.
Well, what are your thought processes on pea protein or beef isolate
Mm-hmm,
protein, unflavored?
mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm.
what's your thought about that?
Yeah, well, I mentioned that. So the pea protein is going to be that vegetable base. It's a very personal preference, depending on, if you do have some gut issues and the pea protein might disrupt your gut a little bit. That's very normal. Sometimes the pea protein will cause a lot of gas. It's just your body taking on a lot of nutrients at one time. So everybody's gut microbiome and their systems are different, so it really just depends. And some people don't want an animal base. They're plant based, so they don't want the whey protein. Whey protein seems to go off without, seems to be tolerated a lot better sometimes than the pea protein because of those gastro issues that can arise. But you want to always look for organic, grass fed when you're looking for whey. Anything that's animal based, you want to look for organic and fully grass fed, because any of the meat products, if they're not fully grass fed, sometimes they're grain finished. And we know that a lot of those grains at the end are contaminated with a lot of chemicals, pesticides, glyphosate, if it's not organic. So the animals are getting a pack, they're getting packed at the end, they're finished with these grains that are not necessarily good for the animal or good for us. So you really need to read your labels. Organic, grass-fed as far as the meat goes, and then organic as far as the pea protein, hemp protein. There's a whole bunch of different kinds out there. So yeah.
Yeah, and the grain finish for the cows is usually in the last 60 to 90 days. And it's
Yes.
because they want to put 600-700 pounds on them. Why? Because they can be bought for a higher price.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's the farmer that needs to make money and everybody else, but it does change the texture and the quality of the meat without
And the
question.
taste.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the taste.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And people
Yeah.
need to pay attention. So thank you for pointing that out. So what about like, let's just say someone came to you and you know they're just wanting a whole like thought about, oh, I'm losing some muscle mass, I'm postmenopausal, this and that. So would you recommend tests for this? Is there something that you test for? I mean, I would think that it would circumference all of the, how's your digestive tract, what's your stool sample telling me, all the things that we've talked about in other shows. But if
Yeah.
someone came to you for that, are there specific tests that ring a bell that you'd say, hey, you're a candidate for this test?
Not really necessarily for protein or for muscle. Excuse me, for muscle. I think I would definitely be interested to see where their hormones are, just to kind of understand where they are kind of in the cycle, finding out what their DHEA levels are, testosterone, estradiol, progesterone, cortisol, all, can be very helpful. A Dutch test can do that. That's a functional hormone test that doctors typically don't do, but as a functional medicine practitioner, I do all of those. And then we really want to just kind of consider their nutrients intake, because there are specific nutrients that are really important for muscle. That's B12, vitamin D, ferritin is something that we can test for in our blood. Regarding iron and zinc, magnesium, our creatinine is also very important, and then our C-reactive protein. So these are all levels that are on some standard blood work, which is really important, that I always like to look at when I'm working with a client. And then inflammation and oxidative stress markers are also important, because all of that is going to say, what is working against the body, right? What levels are appropriate, and then what levels are maybe out of range that could be, as a trickle down effect, affecting that muscle loss and that ability to rebuild that muscle. So Yeah, and then a couple of other tests that are also really important that I love to do are stool tests, and that's going to tell us how protein is being absorbed. If we have a leaky gut, which can happen over time if someone's been eating a poor diet or a diet with a lot of processed foods, a lot of fried foods, that's going to go to break down the lining of the gut, and then protein is not going to be able to be absorbed properly. So in a stool test, we can see if there is extra fat in the stool, protein or vegetables that have not been broken down properly. So that's going to tell us, really what the integrity and what the health of the gut is, and whether or not protein is being properly absorbed. It's also going to tell us what our gut inflammation markers are and any dysbiosis. So stool tests are awesome. I love doing them because it tells us so much, and it definitely can help to tell us if the client is properly absorbing protein. And then, of course, I do a lot of genetics tests also, and a genetic test would tell us, if we have any SNPs, your genetic markers that would tell us if a person would be predisposed to poor protein metabolism or methylation. So those are all tests, hormone tests, regular blood tests, inflammation oxidative markers, a stool test, and then also a genetics test. So all of those things could help us to put together the big picture, which I'm always trying to do, is take all the little puzzle pieces together, put all the little puzzle pieces together to look at that big picture. That would definitely help to tell us about, protein metabolism and how that contributes to muscle recovery.
Once again, this is what sets you apart, is functional medicine versus, allopathic. You're going to dig in and find the root causes of things. So once again, somebody could set up themselves to, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to have that, I'm going to count my protein, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get this, app, I'm going to, include exercise, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And they can all be sabotaged if the gut isn't doing what it needs to do. So,
Absolutely.
it's like drinking water and having a hole in your stomach. It's just going to come straight out and never absorb. So
Exactly.
that's kind of what the picture I was seeing, and I'm like, but you could do all that, and it's not going to do you any good. So these are really,
Yeah, and
really important factors.
let me just piggyback on that really quick, because people will come to me and they're like, "Oh, I want to do a food intolerance test, or I want to do this, I want to do this test." I want to start with the stool test, because that's really, after all of the work that I've done and all of the clients that I've helped, really the root cause of almost everything comes back to our gut. So starting with the stool test is really kind of the foundation, because it gives us so much information to go from. And then food sensitivities can happen over time with a leaky gut. So if we don't get to the leaky gut first, we're not going to fix that. So yeah, it all kind of starts in the gut for sure.
Well, of course, when my silly mind goes, yeah, it's always in the shiat. You got to look at your own shiat, and then,
Yeah, yeah.
and that'll tell you everything about you. You're full of it,
Hmm.
or what's happening in there. Okay, so what words of encouragement could you give somebody who's sort of on this quest of, I think I've been doing it wrong, and they're wanting to make an appointment with you, but they want to kind of get started now. Like, what words of encouragement could you give somebody who's on this quest?
Yeah, so I think honing in really on, really good sources of protein are important. I think, that's where it starts, is to make sure that you're nourishing yourself really well every day. Like I said, animal-based protein sources, eggs, chicken, turkey, wild caught fish, grass-fed beef, like we talked about, plant-based sources of protein, lentils, beans, the typical tofu and tempeh, hemp seeds, quinoa is also very good. Those protein powders that we talked about. Collagen is also something that is really important. It's not a complete protein, which means it's missing some of the amino acids. Um, all of those things, just to make sure that you're incorporating them in your daily diet, is really important. Leucine is one of our essential amino acids that's really important. And over 40 years old, when you're really losing that muscle mass, leucine rich foods are really important. So a lot of the foods that I mentioned do have leucine in them, but that's also going to be very important for muscle building. But you know, getting that protein in every day, engaging, moving your body, reducing that stress level, reducing those stress levels, getting proper sleep. I think those are the best things that, someone can, really know that they're doing the right things. Supplements that are important, making sure that you have vitamin D2 with K2. I'm sorry, vitamin D3 with K2. The K2, vitamin K2 helps that D3 get into our cells better. Okay, so that's a really important, that's definitely one of those markers on your blood test that you want to make sure that is always included to make sure that you check your vitamin D levels. Our omega-3s that come from wild caught fish and can also come from different plant sources. That's going to help reduce inflammation and help to enhance muscle recovery. If somebody does want to supplement with collagen, taking a vitamin C supplement with a collagen is very important. Collagen is essential for our joints and our tendons, especially in women. As we age, those break down. But if you're taking a collagen supplement, you want to make sure that you're also taking a vitamin C, because that vitamin C helps that collagen absorb better. Magnesium is also very important, helps with muscle recovery, relaxation, and sleep. And creatine is also something that's kind of one of those things that's out on social media a lot right now. Creatine is very safe. I would definitely recommend adding that into a smoothie for women, especially. Men, I know men and bodybuilders, they love that. But creatine specifically, creatine monohydrate, it improves strength and muscle mass, especially for women over 50. So those are all just some tips that I would say. Those are all things that, are going to put you on the right track for making sure that you're getting proper protein and that you're supporting your muscles.
Yeah, and I got to piggyback on a pet peeve of mine, and that is that wild caught versus farm raised. And
Mm.
I'll stand in line at Whole Foods and look at everything they have out there, and 90% of it's now farm raised, and people are like, I'm going to
Yeah.
take that and I'm going to take that. They're not even looking that it's wild caught or farm raised. And to me, I'm like, that's just a bowl of parasites that's been shot up with vaccines and contained, and not even, I mean, outside of its natural habitat. I mean, there's nothing wild about it. I mean, it's insane, this farm raised stuff that people are falling for. So
Yeah.
that's just a real big pet peeve of mine. And so, I mean, you're going to pay a little bit more for wild caught because they're not contained in a house and getting vaccines. It makes no sense. However, it's because the farm raised makes the companies more money.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the wild caught are suffering, and so it's cost and demand. So it's costing you more to get something more healthy, just like grass fed, grass finished costs you more, just like pasture raised chickens, pasture raised eggs all cost you more, and they're homeless. They're supposed to be homeless. Anyway, I could go into a whole spiel about that.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
pay attention to what you're doing. And if you have questions and concerns about something, I strongly suggest you get a session with Kendall, and just get a few sessions, go through some things, maybe get a test or two, figure it out, get a complimentary 15-minute chit chat with her to see if you're a candidate. We're all a candidate, by the way. But get in there at kendallmcintosh.com. And then again, do not start looking up all these vitamins and all these things until you have the proper test, because you're going to have shelves and shelves of things that you're never going to assimilate, absorb, or process, or could be complete junk,
Yeah, and I'll just say there's been a few things that have come out on Amazon recently, and no supplements are trusted on Amazon. There are so many counterfeit supplements out there that are being manufactured in very, very poor conditions in warehouses in other countries overseas that are laced with heavy metals and toxins and all sorts of chemicals. So it's very important to know where your products are coming from. That quality is so, so important in everything that you put in your body, because we really can't trust things unless they're coming from a reliable source. I use only medical grade supplements that I recommend, that I know where they're coming from. And it is extremely important because we are being bombarded every day with so many different things in our food, in our air, and in our mind on social media and all of it. So yeah, we got to keep those cortisol levels down.
That's right. And you know what? It's quality versus quantity. And you know, you
Yes.
got to keep it simple. I don't care if it's spiritual or not, but life is a spiritual living experience, no matter what it is you're picking and choosing. So why not keep it as simple, bring some more happiness and joy into your life and to those that surround you. So again, everybody, thank you for tuning in to Keeping It Spiritually Simple. And you know, again, we appreciate the likes, subscribes, the shares, the comments. Leave us a question. If there's
Yeah.
something here that you'd like to have Kendall take a look at, or a topic you'd like us to talk about next. I know we really kind of wanted to also do a spin-off on postmenopausal senior citizens, proper nutrition, exercise, and that kind of thing. So that's another segment that we're going to do. In the meantime, again, as I said, Kendall's link will be in the description. And anything else, Miss Kendall?
No, and I just want to, reiterate that everything I do is personalized. You will not get a personal nutrition plan from any of your doctors. And so my intakes are lengthy. I find out every single thing that's going on with you, your health history. Every body is different and what your body needs versus your spouse, your partner, your sibling, your parents. Everybody is different. So I specifically work to make a personalized plan just for you. So you know exactly how much protein you need, exactly what nutrients you're missing or you need in your body to support your body. And like you said, labs are always an extra bonus to pinpoint everything that's going on. But when you have a personalized plan and you know exactly what your body needs, that sets you up for longevity and being living as vitally and with vitality as you can. So, yep, that's what I do.
Well, Kendall, thank you so much. And you guys all heard it here. We'll see you on the next episode of Keep It Spiritually Simple. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.